If you don't want to read the whole post, the synopsis is essentially that my 28-year-old female husband, 28-year-old male, cheated on me after 8.5 years together while I was 12 weeks pregnant with our first child. It's now June 11th, and my daughter just turned 8 months old. My water broke, and I drove myself to the hospital and then labored and gave birth alone. My daughter was born 2 weeks early, and she was completely healthy and had no issues. She is doing amazing, and the love I have for her is so all-encompassing that sometimes I don't even know what to do. She's a great baby and is loved not just by myself, but also by my dad, my brothers, and my aunt. She is adored by my whole family, and because we live with my dad, her birth has brought all of us closer than we've been in a long, long time. I absolutely love being her mom. My ex-husband was served divorce papers in February by my dad, who volunteered to be the one to do it, and our divorce was finalized in May. The way that my feelings for him changed almost instantly after I had given birth to my daughter was shocking. But as soon as she was born, just the thought of this man disgusted me. He visits for about an hour a week, once a week, and has done so since she was born. We have a parenting plan in the works, but every time it's drawn up by my lawyer, he finds something else that's wrong with it and chooses not to sign. It's been very irritating having to deal with this man, who I once loved and now don't recognize, and watch as he pretends on social media that he is an active, attentive father, when I've done everything for this baby and he does the bare minimum he can get away with. This next part may be very shocking, but the girl he cheated on me with and moved into an apartment with directly from our marital home ended up cheating on him literally within the same week that our divorce finalized, and she was kicked out of his place. It took about a year, but he did come back groveling after all, which was absolutely wild to me. Now, for the actual shocking part of this update, I have met a man. After spending my entire pregnancy alone and heartbroken, I had sworn off men and relationships. And then this one just kind of appeared in my life. I have horrible trust issues now, and it's been really, really hard considering the deep betrayal that happened to me last year. But my boyfriend is the most gentle, calm, understanding guy I could have found. We met when my daughter was 2 months old, and he started taking me on little weekend dates for just a couple of hours at a time, and was always very considerate of me having a newborn, which he reassured me several times over that it was not an issue. And he actually has experience working with kids in the past. And then in March, we defined the relationship. In these 6 months, he has met my family and has become one of my daughter's favorite people. I've met his brother and sister-in-law, and when his parents come into town later this month, he's introducing me, and we're all getting dinner together. I feel lucky to have this man in my life and a stable father figure for my daughter, and I am really hoping he is actually who he's been showing me he is. Obviously, when my ex-husband came to apologize and cry for what he'd done to me, I was already very committed to my boyfriend, but even if I hadn't been, the answer would have been no. Our house is not yet sold, and I'm kind of losing my mind about it, but there's nothing to really be done to help that matter. I know this may sound like revenge corn, but I promise it's not. Karma has just been working hard for me and my little bean Tilda. My boyfriend dotes on us and makes me believe in love again. He is so handsome and so sweet, and the complete opposite of who my ex-husband ended up being. I am really hoping he is a good egg, because I accidentally fell in love with him when I didn't mean to. But I do now know that I was strong enough to leave a marriage with a baby on the way. So if he ends up screwing me over, I know I'll be strong enough to leave him too. The fact that my ex's affair partner cheated on him absolutely tickles me, to be completely honest. I'm still living with my dad, plus my 2 dogs and cat that he abandoned me with during my pregnancy. But honestly, it could absolutely be worse. My dad helps as much as he can and loves his grandbaby so much. And it's been so sweet watching him turn into this absolute softie of a grandpa. I don't know if anyone remembers me or my post, or if this update is necessary at all, but here it is. I am big time not in love with the guy who cheated on me, left me, and is an absent father to the baby I grew all on my own and raised all on my own. To add, I'm not sure why this post is not allowing comments anymore, even from myself. Thank you to those of you who left lovely ones and messaged me because you couldn't comment. Maybe I'll do an update in a few years, if anything needs updating. Also, I realize I forgot to say that neither he or his affair partner stayed working at the same business for very long. So after I gave birth and no longer needed his insurance, They both were not working there for me to report their relationship. My ex-husband did make sure to take paid paternity leave and do nothing paternal with it. But no, I never got to report them to his boss. As long as he stayed technically employed through the end of the year, when my own insurance took over, it was more helpful to leave it alone. Anywho, thanks for all the love to me and my baby girl, and the well wishes with my boyfriend. My Reddit experience has been very nice because of all of y'all. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. As a courtesy, I went back and read the original post, and it was honestly heartbreaking. Sounds to me like his talk of being a father were empty platitudes, and when the reality struck, he self-sabotaged as an escape. Then he got cheated on, but what did he expect? To live happily ever after with someone who had shown they had zero regard for others. I have no sympathy. I'm glad you are having a better time of it now, and hope it continues for you. Comment 2. Congratulations, OP. There was a comment in your original post about how you are a strong woman. I hope you can see that now. You drove yourself to the hospital while in labor and gave birth alone. Probably not what you had in your birth plan, but that's pretty badass. You are setting an amazing example for your daughter. Wishing you all the best in the years to come. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. So, a lot has happened in the past 3 days. My boyfriend and I had a serious conversation about our future, and it was both terrifying and exhilarating. We were sitting on the couch after putting my daughter to bed, and he brought up the idea of moving in together. At first, I was hesitant. I mean, it's a huge step, especially considering my trust issues and the fact that my daughter is still so young. But he was so patient and understanding, and he reassured me that he was in this for the long haul. He even suggested we take it slow and maybe start by spending more nights together before making any big decisions. The next day, I got a call from my real estate agent. She had some news about the house. Apparently, there was a potential buyer who was very interested, but they wanted to negotiate the price down significantly. This was a huge risk because if we accepted the lower offer, it would barely cover the remaining mortgage and leave me with almost nothing to start fresh. But if we didn't accept, there was no guarantee another offer would come along anytime soon. I spent the entire day agonizing over what to do. My dad and brothers were supportive, but they left the final decision up to me. That evening, my ex-husband showed up unannounced. He wanted to talk about the parenting plan again. I was already on edge from the house situation, and his presence just made everything worse. He started nitpicking the plan, as usual, and I finally snapped. I told him that if he didn't sign the plan as it was, I would take him to court and fight for full custody. I think he realized I was serious this time, because he finally agreed to sign. It was a small victory, but it felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The following day, I met with my real estate agent again. I decided to take the risk and accept the lower offer. It was a tough decision, but I knew I needed to move on and start fresh. Later that day, my boyfriend surprised me with a small celebration. He had cooked dinner and set up a little picnic in the living room. It was such a sweet gesture, and it made me feel like everything was going to be okay. As we were eating, he brought up the idea of meeting his parents again. They were coming into town in a few days, and he wanted to make sure I was comfortable with it. I agreed, but I couldn't shake the feeling of anxiety. Meeting his parents felt like another huge step, and I wasn't sure if I was ready, but he reassured me that they were excited to meet me and my daughter, and that they would love us both. The next day, I got a call from my lawyer. The parenting plan was officially signed and filed. It was such a relief to have that finally settled. I felt like I could finally breathe again. My dad and brothers were thrilled, and we decided to have a little family celebration that evening. It was a simple dinner at home, but it was filled with laughter and love. My daughter was the center of attention, as always, and it was heartwarming to see how much she was adored by everyone. As the days went on, I started to feel more at ease with the idea of moving in with my boyfriend. We spent more nights together, and it felt natural and right. My daughter adored him, and he was so good with her. It was clear that he genuinely cared for both of us, and that made all the difference. One evening, as we were putting my daughter to bed, he shared a story from his past. He told me about his own parents' divorce and how it had affected him. It was a vulnerable moment, and it made me realize just how much he understood what I was going through. It also made me appreciate him even more, for being so patient and supportive. As we lay in bed that night, I couldn't help but think about how far I'd come. From the heartbreak of my ex-husband's betrayal to finding love and stability again, it had been interesting to say the least of emotions. But I felt stronger and more resilient than ever. I knew that no matter what happened, I had the strength to face it head on. The next day, we met his parents for dinner. I was nervous, but they were warm and welcoming. They adored my daughter and made me feel like part of the family. It was a wonderful evening, and it solidified my decision to move forward with my boyfriend. In the end, taking the risk with the house and opening my heart to love again paid off. My daughter and I are in a good place, surrounded by people who love and support us. And while there will always be challenges, I know that we can face them together. Thanks for reading. Aita for refusing to move to Alaska. Despite my husband's threats and ultimatums, I met my husband around 10 years ago in a state in the Southeast, where we have lived for the past 10 years. We got married about 5 years ago and have a 2-year-old child. Ever since we met, my husband has had an affinity for Alaska. He was stationed there for a year or so well before we met. He moved to the Southeast from Alaska for work opportunities and to be closer to his family. Most of our family lives in the Southeast, but it requires some driving to visit them, about 4 to 6 hours. In the past few years, he has come to regret moving to the Southeast. My husband has been completely miserable for years, where we currently live. He seems to dislike everything. People, culture, etc., and has been increasingly more difficult to be around. And he says it is because he hates living in the Southeast and wants to move with his family, me and our child, to Alaska. A few years ago, he raised the ante and pressure about moving to Alaska. He asked what he can do to move our family to Alaska more than 3 times a day, every day. I expressed my concerns, then he threatened self-harm, etc. The pressure to move to Alaska increased significantly during my pregnancy. I felt extremely guilty, and as a result, I reluctantly agreed to move. However, I couldn't stomach moving forward with any move to Alaska. It just didn't make sense to me. I explained to my husband, we have no family or friends in Alaska. It is so far away. I know I'll have problems with the cold, long dark nights. The cost of living is so much higher there. It's already challenging to see family in the Southeast where we live, and I can't imagine living more than 3,000 miles away. In fact, I want to move closer now that we have a child. He says I can always visit family if I need to. He works remotely and can likely keep his job. However, I don't know if I'd be able to keep mine, which I am absolutely passionate about, due to time zone changes and increased cost of living. My husband's adamant it is his dream to experience wilderness subsistence living with our child and me, and believes that living can only be accomplished in Alaska. He is seriously not interested in living in any other state, unless I fully commit to moving to Alaska at some point. I have discussed exploring at least 3 other states in the Southeast where we wouldn't be uprooted, but still driving distance from family. He only wants Alaska. Recently, he got to the point where he told me and our child to move out immediately so he can move to Alaska. He said he was desperate and didn't have any other options. He has told me he hates me and has so much resentment towards me over me keeping him from his dream, yet still tries to get me to move with him. He says he will never let it go. I want him to be happy, I do, but at what cost? I feel like he's unhappy with himself and life and is saying he can only be happy in Alaska. I feel extremely guilty, like I am being selfish. I said, can we go visit as a family and stay there every summer? In addition to that, I would support him taking as many extra trips as he needs to satisfy that need to be in Alaska. He says his need is to be there full-time with his family. So my concessions are an insult to him. I am trying to be a supportive wife. I don't want to be selfish, but I am also trying to think of our child, and my gut tells me moving there would not be in our best interest. Also, there are just things in the marriage that I am not confident about, which have made me more reluctant. He raises his voice often, curses lots without regard to child presence, has substance use issues, etc. I am not confident these will improve moving away. As an example, I ask simple things even before this, like, how was your day? He scoffs like I'm wasting his time. I feel emotionally alone. Meanwhile, he insists he only treats me that way because I've made his dream so difficult. I do believe he genuinely believes we could live a healthier life in Alaska. To add, we were attending counseling, but my husband canceled out of anger yesterday when I wouldn't agree to promise to move to Alaska and said I couldn't consider it until I felt better about our relationship. My husband has made it clear he will be leaving for Alaska at some point. I have to decide if I'm going to join him. In many ways, I think we've come to a point of no return, which breaks my heart. So I guess I'm here for words of encouragement, helpful advice, or suggestions. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. As someone whose ex-husband did exactly this, not once but twice, I was the dutiful wife and went along with it. It turned out to be the biggest mistake of my life. In hindsight, divorce was a wiser choice. Men like that only see you as an accessory. Your hopes, dreams, and opinions are not part of their plan. They will push and threaten to get their way, and you will continue to give in and lose yourself to please him. It's better to divorce now while you have a support network and a good job. I wish someone had given me this advice when I was in your shoes. Comment 2. Let him go alone. Stay in the southeastern SE region and move closer to family. He is refusing to go to counseling to discuss and work on your relationship. Tell him he can go for a year, he can travel back to see you and the child/you, and the child will travel to see him. At the end of the year, you will decide the next step in your relationship. I predict that your marriage will not survive, as he only cares about himself in this case, and is not rational about the entire enterprise. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me through all of this. So, 3 months have passed since my last update, and a lot has happened. After my husband canceled our counseling sessions, things got even more tense at home. He became more withdrawn and spent most of his time either working or researching about Alaska. I tried to keep things normal for our child, but it was hard. The constant tension was taking a toll on both of us. One day, out of the blue, my husband announced that he had booked a solo trip to Alaska. He said he needed to go and see if it was really what he wanted. I was shocked, but also relieved. Maybe some time apart would give us both some clarity. He left a week later, and I was left to manage everything on my own. It was tough, but I felt a strange sense of peace without the constant pressure. While he was gone, I started to think more seriously about our future. I reached out to a lawyer to understand my options, just in case. I also started looking into job opportunities closer to my family. I didn't want to make any hasty decisions, but I needed to be prepared for whatever came next. My husband was gone for 2 weeks. When he came back, he was different. He seemed calmer, more at peace. He told me that he had found a small cabin in the remote part of Alaska and had put down a deposit. He said he was moving there in a month and that he wanted me and our child to come with him. I felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and a tiny bit of hope. Maybe this was the change we needed. But then he dropped a shocker. He had met someone while he was in Alaska, a woman who shared his love for the wilderness and subsistence living. He said they had connected on a deep level and that she had offered to help him get settled. I was devastated. It felt like a betrayal, but at the same time, I couldn't blame him. We had been drifting apart for so long. I asked him if he was planning to leave us for her. He said no, that he still wanted us to come with him, but that he needed to be honest about what had happened. I didn't know what to think. I felt like my world was falling apart, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. Maybe this was the push I needed to finally make a decision. Over the next few weeks, we had some difficult conversations. I told him that I couldn't move to Alaska, not with everything that had happened. He was disappointed, but said he understood. He still wanted to be a part of our child's life, but he needed to follow his dream. We agreed to separate, and he would move to Alaska while I stayed in the Southeast. The fallout from this decision was hard. Our families were shocked and upset. My parents were supportive, but worried about how I would manage on my own. His family was less understanding, blaming me for not supporting his dream. It was a tough time, but I knew I had made the right decision for me and our child. As I started to rebuild my life, I found a new job closer to my family. It wasn't easy, but having their support made a big difference. My husband and I worked out a co-parenting arrangement. He would visit every few months, and we would do video calls so he could stay connected with our child. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best we could do under the circumstances. During this time, I also learned more about my husband's past. His love for Alaska wasn't just about the wilderness. It was also about escaping from a difficult childhood. He had grown up in a chaotic household with parents who were always fighting. Alaska had been his refuge, a place where he felt safe and in control. Understanding this helped me see why he was so desperate to go back. It didn't excuse his behavior, but it gave me some perspective. As for the woman he met in Alaska, they stayed in touch, but it didn't turn into anything serious. He told me that she had helped him see what he really wanted, but that he wasn't ready for another relationship. I appreciated his honesty, even though it was painful. In the end, our separation was bittersweet. We both lost something, but we also gained a chance to find ourselves again. My husband found peace in Alaska, and I found strength in staying true to myself. Our child is adjusting, and we're doing our best to make sure they feel loved and supported. Thank you for reading. Aita for forgiving my girlfriend after she admitted to missing her abusive ex. And contacting him, I've been dating a girl for about 8 months. We've been official for about 5 months now. Everything has been good. We go to many places. We enjoy each other's company. We play games, watch movies, and introduced each other to our families. Things are great. Except for one thing. She is massively insecure. Everything can be going great. And then one of her insecurities will flare up, and it will immediately become my problem, which causes anything from minor annoyance to an argument. And I can never predict when it will happen. We could be having a great day, until she starts getting nosy about why I'm checking my phone. Or she'll start getting antsy and accusatory over who I'm following or liking on social media, which is none of her business. And I shut that down because I'm doing nothing bad to her, and I'm not getting blamed for pixels on a screen. These random outbursts have caused a lot of tension, and sometimes it makes me feel like I'm being accused of disloyalty when I've been nothing but honest. I try to have a mature conversation whenever it comes up, but she doesn't process it well, and suddenly I'm on the spot because she does something like obsess over my Twitter account that I barely use. I'm not even liking anything overly political or nefarious, but I just like creative cosplay pics every now and then, alongside random memes and video game stuff, which I told her isn't okay. It really pisses me off because it's been the one big wrinkle in an otherwise very nice relationship. Fast forward to last week. We were planning to travel to a nearby city and celebrate something when a few days prior, I happened to check her Reddit. She posts about a lot of things, but then I found her poking around our breakups multiple times in the past few months about how much she still misses her ex. The same ex who she told me abused her and threw her away over a year ago. The most recent being just days earlier. I was furious, but I tried to ignore it. At our celebration, everything was going well, until she made another slight about something out of nowhere that suggested I was lying about something I said. And I just got angry and went off on her about the posts because I'm tired of being treated like I'm the bad guy every time she has a random insecure outburst when I've done nothing wrong. She apologized, claimed she was still processing the breakup and didn't want him anymore. Said she wanted me, cried, etc. I was still very angry. I did nothing of what she suspected me of. And yet here she is posting about her ex multiple times. We went back to the hotel. I was not happy. She went through a mix of crying, apologizing, and throwing her insecurities at me, and we both argued and went to bed angry. I woke up, had a breakdown. She tried to comfort me, but I honestly wasn't sure I even wanted to stay in the room. I treat her like gold, and there she goes posting about her ex. She says she's sorry, but in my mind, there's no excuse for this, and it's a massive sign of disrespect. I have now spent hundreds of dollars for a 2-day vacation that made me miserable. I don't know what to do. This was someone I clicked so well with and thought I saw a future with. But I can't handle being treated horribly like a suspect on a random whim on some occasions. And now seeing this. I know she's not actually cheating on me, but this massively betrayed any trust I had in her. Very much contemplating leaving. Need to decide the next steps because I am still furious about it. Imagine if the roles were reversed. She says she wants to make it up to me and is sorry and wants to do better, but I'm so at my wit's end that I'm not sure she's worth another chance. I haven't seen her since, as I told her I need to process this. She's trying to talk with me online, and I can't help but be short with her because I am still so angry. I don't know if this is worth forgiving. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. So when she asks you what you are doing on your phone or looks at your social media, you shut her down rudely because you aren't about to get in trouble for pixels on a screen. But then, you are okay poking around her Reddit and being upset about what you find. You are either a couple who is allowed to have feelings about what you are doing on your phone or online, or you are not. You can't have it both ways. Also, the way you shut her down when she has a question about your phone use is rude and unnecessary. That is not treating someone like gold. Comment 2. She is still processing the breakup. She told you that. She misses her ex even though he was hurtful. She could be trauma bonded, suffering from PTSD. She is treating you like her ex. She needs therapy. She needs to find herself. She should not be in a relationship. She is going to give you issues that you will carry on with you. She doesn't trust you. Relationships are built on trust. It's time for both of you to let this relationship go. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading. So, after that disastrous trip, I decided to take a few days to myself to really think things over. I needed space to process everything that had happened. I told her I needed some time, and she reluctantly agreed, though she kept messaging me, trying to apologize and explain herself. I was still too angry to respond properly, so I mostly ignored her texts. On the second day, I went to visit my best friend. I needed someone to talk to, someone who knew me well enough to give me some perspective. We sat in his living room, and I poured out everything that had happened. He listened quietly, nodding occasionally, and when I was done, he sighed and said, "Man, that's rough, but you need to figure out if you can trust her again. Without trust, there's no relationship." That hit me hard. Trust was the core issue here. I had trusted her, and she had shattered that trust by posting about her ex while accusing me of things I hadn't done. I left my friend's place feeling a bit clearer, but still conflicted. The next day, I decided to confront her. I couldn't keep avoiding the issue. We met at a local park, a neutral place where we could talk without distractions. She looked nervous, and I could tell she had been crying. We sat on a bench, and I started by telling her how hurt and betrayed I felt. She listened, tears streaming down her face, and when I was done, she apologized again, saying she was still dealing with her past and didn't know how to handle it. Then she dropped the news. She admitted that she'd been seeing a therapist for her insecurities and past trauma, but had stopped going a few months ago because she thought she was better. She realized now that she wasn't and that she needed to go back to therapy. She asked if I would be willing to give her another chance if she promised to work on herself and her issues. This put me in a tough spot. On one hand, I could see she was genuinely remorseful and wanted to change. On the other hand, I was still hurt and unsure if I could trust her again. I told her I needed more time to think about it and that I appreciated her honesty. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying our conversation in my head. I thought about the good times we had, the laughter, the shared experiences, and how well we clicked. But I also thought about the constant accusations, the insecurities, and now this betrayal. I was torn. The next day, I decided to talk to my mom. She had always been a good sounding board for me. We sat in the kitchen and I told her everything. She listened, and when I was done, she said, "Relationships are hard work. If you think she's worth it, and if she's willing to put in the effort to change, maybe it's worth giving her another chance. But only if you believe you can trust her again." Her words stuck with me. I realized that I needed to see if she was serious about changing. I called her and told her that I was willing to give her one more chance, but only if she went back to therapy and we worked on rebuilding trust together. She agreed immediately and promised to make an appointment with her therapist. Over the next few days, we started talking more. She kept me updated on her therapy sessions and shared what she was learning about herself. It was a slow process, but I could see she was making an effort. I was still cautious, but I wanted to believe she could change. One evening, we were talking about our pasts, and she opened up about her previous relationship in more detail. She told me about the abuse she had suffered and how it had left her with deep scars. She admitted that she had never fully dealt with it and that it had affected her relationship with me. Hearing her story made me understand her insecurities a bit more, but it also made me realize how much work we both had ahead of us. As we continued to talk and work on our relationship, I started to see small changes in her behavior. She was less accusatory and more open about her feelings. She still had moments of insecurity, but she was learning to handle them better. I was cautiously optimistic, but I knew it would take time to rebuild the trust that had been broken. One night, as we were talking, she mentioned something that caught me off guard. She said, "I know I've hurt you, and I know I have a lot to work on, but I want you to know that I love you, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this work." Her words were sincere, and for the first time in a while, I felt a glimmer of hope. But before I get into that, there's something else I need to mention. During one of our conversations, she revealed a secret that forced me to make a hard choice. She admitted that she had been in contact with her ex a few times after we started dating. She swore it was only to get closure and that nothing romantic had happened, but it still felt like a betrayal. I had to decide if I could move past this or if it was the final straw. I took a few days to think about it. I talked to my best friend again, and he reminded me that everyone makes mistakes and that it's how we handle them that matters. I realized that if I wanted to give her another chance, I had to let go of the past and focus on the future. So I decided to forgive her. It wasn't easy, and it took a lot of effort from both of us. But we started to rebuild our relationship. She continued with her therapy, and we worked on our communication and trust. It was a long and difficult process, but we were both committed to making it work. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day!